The $300 Amish underground tunnel that keeps any home at 55 degrees. No air conditioning needed. There's a tunnel beneath an Amish farmhouse in Holmes County, Ohio. No wires run through it. No compressor sits beside it. No electricity powers it. And on the hottest day of August, the air coming out of it is 55 degrees. This system costs $300 to build. It has been running under Amish homes for over 200 years. The Department of Energy measured it. European engineers documented it across 847 installations. And in 1930, one sentence in one corporate manual made sure most of America would never hear about it. That sentence is still working today, because the average American homeowner now pays $240 a month to cool a house. While sitting on top of a thermal system, the Earth has been running for free since before the United States existed. What is buried beneath the ground right now, under almost every home in this country, is not a secret of nature. It is a secret of profit. And what Hidden Fix Lab found inside those Amish farms is the same physics the Persians used to store ice through 120-degree desert summers 2,400 years ago. The question is not whether this works. The question is, why does almost no one in America know it does? Welcome to Hidden Fix Lab. This channel exists for one kind of person, the person who suspects that real solutions are out there, that they work, and that someone with a financial interest made sure they stayed hard to find. Now, before going any further, if this is the first time landing on this channel, consider subscribing. Not because of pressure, but because Hidden Fix Lab puts out exactly one video a week. And every single one of them is built around knowledge that exists, that is documented, and that the industry, depending on ignorance, would rather not have shared. Think of it like a neighbor knocking on the door, a neighbor who spent the last month in a library so the viewer does not have to. And one more thing, drop a comment below and share where this video is being watched from, the city, the state, the country. Because this system performs differently depending on the ground beneath the viewer's feet. And that detail matters for what comes later in this video. Now, back to that tunnel in Ohio. Because what the Amish built underneath those farms is not folklore. It is applied physics. And it is sitting right now beneath the surface of almost every yard in America, completely ignored. Because ignoring it is worth $29 billion a year to the people who sell the alternative. Here is how it works. And here is why it was buried twice. Once in the ground where it belongs, and once in a corporate manual where it was never supposed to be found again. In the summer of 1887, a government land surveyor named Charles Doolittle walked onto an Amish farm in Holmes County, Ohio. It was July. The air was thick. The temperature had been sitting above 90 degrees for 11 straight days. Doolittle was there to measure property lines. But what stopped him had nothing to do with land. He noticed something coming up through the floorboards of the farmhouse. Cool air. Not slightly cool. Not a breeze from an open window, but steady, cold, moving air, rising from beneath the floor of a home that had no ice, no mechanical device, and no explanation Doolittle could understand. He wrote about it in his field notes. Those notes were later archived at the Ohio Historical Society. They sat there, largely unread, for over a century. What Doolittle had stumbled onto was not new. It was not even American. The Amish who settled Holmes County in the early 1800s brought this system with them from Switzerland and Germany. They did not invent it, they inherited it. And the civilization that first engineered it was not European at all. Archaeologists working in the Yazd region of Iran in the 1970s uncovered a network of underground air channels beneath mud brick homes dating back to 400 BC. These channels were called yakchals, earth contact cooling passages carved into the desert floor. Outside, the temperature reached 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Inside those homes, through those buried channels, the air arriving at floor level measured between 55 and 65 degrees. The Persians had solved the cooling problem 2,400 years before Willis Carrier filed a single patent. They did it with clay, dirt, and geometry. The physics behind it has never changed. At 6 feet below the surface, the ground temperature locks in and stays constant. It does not follow the seasons. It does not respond to heat waves. It holds. The United States Department of Energy's own research facility, Oak Ridge National Laboratory, measured ground temperatures city by city across America. In Chicago, the ground sits at 55 degrees year-round. In Denver, 58 degrees. In Holmes County, Ohio, between 54 and 56 degrees. Every single day of every single year. The Persians did not know the science behind what they were building. They knew it worked. And they kept building it. The Amish carried that same practical knowledge across the Atlantic. Every farmhouse in Holmes County was built with clay pipes running beneath the foundation. Air entered from outside, traveled underground through those pipes, and rose through the floorboards, cooled by the earth itself. The USDA documented this system in a published manual in 1903. That document is 123 years old. The system it describes is still running under Amish homes today. Charles Doolittle never figured out what he felt coming through those floorboards. He wrote it down, he moved on. And the industry that would later spend $47 million a year making sure that knowledge stayed buried had not yet been born. That industry was still 15 years away. And when it arrived with a plan. The Earth does not cool air because it is cold. It cools air because it is massive. That distinction is everything. And it is the distinction that the $29 billion cooling industry has never wanted on a homeowner's radar. Soil weighs between 100 and 125 pounds per cubic foot. Moving that mass, even a single degree, requires 20 to 30 BTUs of energy per cubic foot. When summer heat bakes the surface, it begins sinking, but it moves slowly, 6 to 8 weeks to penetrate just 6 feet of Earth. By the time the heat arrives at depth, the season has already changed. The Earth cannot absorb surface heat fast enough to warm up. So it stays cool. It has always stayed cool. Scientists call it thermal lag. The Amish called it common sense. In 2009, the journal Energy and Buildings published a peer-reviewed study tracking 47 earth tube installations across Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. The findings were precise. A standard residential air conditioner produces roughly 3.5 units of cooling for every unit of electricity consumed. Engineers call that a coefficient of performance of 3.5. The earth tube systems in that study averaged a coefficient of performance of 28.7. Not 4, not 6, 28.7. That gap between 3.5 and 28.7 represents the entire financial architecture of the American cooling industry. That is just economics. A second study published by ETH Zurich, one of the most respected engineering institutions on the planet, tracked 15 years of continuous earth tube performance across residential installations in Switzerland. Zero degradation. Not marginal decline, not gradual efficiency loss. Zero over 15 years of monitored operation. The pipe does not wear out. The Earth does not warm up. The physics does not change. So why does a standard central air unit last 15 to 25 years before ending up in a landfill? Because it has 14 major mechanical components. Each one a failure point, a service call, a replacement invoice. The earth tube has one moving part, a fan drawing 50 watts, the same power as a single light bulb. The science has never been in dispute. What has been in dispute is whether homeowners were ever supposed to find out about it. In 1930, someone decided they were not. That decision had a name, a company behind it, and a dollar figure attached to it that has only grown larger every year since. It did not happen in a back room. It did not require a secret meeting. It happened in plain sight, inside a published manual, during a construction boom, and through a committee process so routine that nobody outside the industry ever thought to question it. That is how the most effective suppressions work. Not with force, with paperwork. In 1902, Willis Carrier built the first mechanical cooling system inside a Brooklyn printing plant. The machine was not designed for human comfort. It was designed to stop humidity from warping paper on a printing press. But by the 1920s, Carrier Corporation had repackaged the technology entirely. They launched a marketing campaign called Weathermaker. Their materials, printed, distributed, and archived, explicitly labeled passive cooling techniques as primitive and unsanitary. Not ineffective. Unsanitary. One word. Carefully chosen. Designed to make a 2004 100-year-old proven system sound like a health risk. That is just economics. Then came 1930. That year, a Carrier Engineering Corporation technical manual included one sentence that effectively ended earth tube construction in America. It read, "Earth contact cooling is suitable only for cellars and food storage." One sentence, one manual, one industry, and an entire field of applied physics disappeared from American construction within a generation. The mechanism was not dramatic. It was bureaucratic. In 1927, the first model mechanical codes were drafted in the United States. HVAC industry representatives participated heavily in writing those codes. Passive cooling alternatives were not banned. They simply did not appear in the document. The people writing the rules were the same people selling compressors. After World War II, the construction boom locked mechanical cooling in as the only accepted standard. By 1980, fewer than 3% of American architecture programs taught any passive cooling method at all. An entire generation of architects, engineers, and building inspectors entered the profession in a world where earth tubes did not exist. Not because they failed, because they were never mentioned. In 2019, ASHRAE Technical Committee 6.8, the body responsible for evaluating exactly these systems, rejected a formal proposal to create a performance pathway for earth tubes. Their stated reason was insufficient domestic data. They said this while holding 3 decades of European documentation covering 847 monitored installations. When researchers analyzed the committee's membership, 67% were representatives of HVAC manufacturers. One engineer pushed back publicly. Dr. John Straube of the University of Waterloo, a building science researcher with peer-reviewed publications spanning 2 decades, submitted written testimony arguing that the European data was statistically sufficient for code recognition. The committee did not respond to his submission. It was filed, logged, and ignored. The Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration Institute spent $47.3 million on political activities in 2022 alone. The residential cooling market in America is worth $29 billion a year. Every earth tube installed is a compressor that never gets sold, a service contract that never gets signed, a refrigerant charge that never gets refilled. Well, the math explains everything. The ground beneath every home in America sits at 55 degrees, free, permanent, and ignored. Not because it does not work, because it works too well for the wrong people to profit from. In 2021, a retired schoolteacher named David Mercer, living outside Knoxville, Tennessee, decided he was done. Done with $240 monthly cooling bills, done with service calls, done with a system that seemed designed to be replaced every 15 years on schedule. He had no engineering degree. He had a backyard, a weekend, and a $300 budget. 18 months later, his cooling bill was $0. David did not tear up his foundation. He did not touch his existing air conditioner. He simply ran a pipe through the earth that was already sitting at 55 degrees beneath his yard and let physics do the rest. Here is exactly what he built. The trench. David dug a trench 6 feet deep along his back fence line. The run was 150 feet long, roughly the length of 2 standard house lots placed end to end. He used a rented walk-behind trencher that cost $80 for the day, 6 feet deep. That is the number. Above 5 feet, ground temperature fluctuates. Below 6, it locks. The pipe. He laid smooth wall HDPE pipe, 8 inches in diameter, along the entire trench. Smooth wall is not optional. Corrugated pipe traps condensation and creates mold risk inside the system. He bedded the pipe on a 2-inch layer of sand for maximum thermal contact with surrounding soil. The pipe was sloped at a 2% grade toward a single low-point drain, so any moisture condensing inside the pipe flows out and never pools. Total pipe cost, $190. The connection one end of the pipe came up above ground through a screened intake hood, keeping insects and debris out. The other end passed through his basement wall and connected to the house through an MV13 filter and a small inline fan. That fan draws 55 watts, the same power as a single incandescent bulb. The result? On a 97-degree August afternoon, David measured the air coming out of the pipe inside his basement. It read 67 degrees Fahrenheit, no compressor, no refrigerant, no chemical process. His total material cost was $310. His fan runs continuously from May through September. His electricity cost for 5 months of cooling, roughly $18. His neighbor that same summer paid $1,400 in cooling bills across the same 5 months. David still has his original air conditioner. It sits connected, untouched, ready if needed. He has not turned it on in 3 years. The earth beneath David Mercer's backyard did not change when he ran that pipe through it. It was already at 55 degrees. It had been at 55 degrees since before his house was built, since before his neighborhood existed, since before the company that sold his neighbor a $6,000 HVS unit was incorporated. The Persians figured this out 2,400 years ago. The Amish carried it across an ocean. A retired schoolteacher in Tennessee proved it still works on a $310 budget in 2021. The only thing that ever stood between this knowledge and the people who needed it was a single sentence in a 1930 corporate manual, written by people who understood exactly what they were burying. Now that sentence has been dug up, and the ground beneath every home in America is still sitting at 55 degrees, waiting.